today that I wasn't familiar with, but they were talking about the speed of growth if we put it in the ground. So in 5 years, a cypress can grow to 3 meters, 9 feet. In 41 years, it can grow to 21 meters, 60 feet, 65 feet or so. And then in 96 years, it can grow to 36 feet, or 36 meters, and apparently they stop growing tall at 200 years. They don't grow any taller than
What's
that.
with them?
Yeah. The cypress in Florida, they're all 1,000 or years less. And Ben, yours is not 900 years old.
Well, nobody's here to measure it.
Well, it's not 900 years old. The oldest ones are only 1,000 to 1,500, and that's by far much smaller.
What would you say is Schley's root certificate?
I would say it's not correct.
Verified by a lab that does it, or arborist?
There's no way to
I don't know
there's
the
no
whole
way
story.
to determine it because the ring count is not an accurate way.
Right.
Because
Also, the base to where it came from is Schley collected himself. So he
yeah, the ring method is not an accurate way
It
of
was like
determining
9 feet
it.
around or something like that.
What's that?
It was about 9 feet around. It was the only standing shard left over after one of the big hurricanes from whatever.
Okay. Well, maybe it is that old, but
He's pissed out at me, but it's neat.
yeah, you know, the one that was here in Orlando that got burned by the crackhead. Yeah, that was what, 1,500 years old.
3,500.
3,500.
Are you sure on that?
Positive.
Okay. All right. So I've been told the ones in Corkscrew Swamp are only 1,500 years
That one
old.
was 3,500 years.
Maybe it was lady senator that was 1,500.
Yeah.
Senator. That was
The inch every 20-year rule.
I would
After 9
probably
years.
debate that a little bit, just from what I've kind of read.
This was 15.
So I don't know, but what I read is 1,000 or so
see it?
years is what. Pardon me?
Did you ever see it?
Not that one, but I've been to Corkscrew Swamp, and they got 20 feet wide. I mean, the diameter of the tree is 20 feet wide, and they're saying only 1,500 for that one.
Yeah, pot.
So, but I don't know. I mean, and what I've read is the ring method is just not an accurate way to determine age, because sometimes we'll have two rings in a year, sometimes we'll have no rings. It just depends on the stress and the environment that they live in. So maybe it is older than I think it is, but yeah, that'd be cool if it was. Yeah. What else? Any questions before we get started? Yeah, that's what we're gonna do now. Yeah. No, I'm just gonna talk about it.
Do more
I
drawings,
only brought one
do more
tool, though.
drawings, do more drawings.
Yeah, I only brought one tool.
That lake, in Cypress, that was really cool.
All right, I guess I'm gonna take one quick talk about my tree. This tree was on display at the Brevard Zoo for the last several years. This is a bald cypress. This one this was straight out like that, and so I bent it down and I've held it in place. After the hurricane, something fell and broke off the back branches, so it's only 2 dimensions. Pond cypress, yeah. Oh, let me go over the differences on pond cypress and bald cypress. Yeah, I kind of wanted to do a literati, kind of weaving down. And it takes forever for this to hold. I think I've got 6 years on this so far. And if I was to let it go, it'd still probably pop up.
Really?
Yeah. So determining pond versus bald cypress.
We got a forest with 3 of one and 2 of the other. No idea which one.
All right, so if you see how wide and open up that leaf is, that's typical for a bald cypress. This is typical of a pond cypress, a little more narrow.
A little.
I heard it worded as.
You can get both styles of leaves on a pond.
On the same tree, yeah. Yeah, and they can, they can have these type of leaves on this tree as well. But generally speaking, it's going to be a little more narrow leaf, a little bit more weepy of a growth than a bald cypress. This is bald cypress. This is pond cypress. The bark is going to be a little redder. This is going to be a little more grayer. Other than that, they're the same.
Can they interchange between each other?
About the
One
same.
can change into another?
This one is probably a little weaker and a little more top dominant.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's harder to grow bottom branches.
Slide told me once that sometimes the bulb can transform into a pond and vice versa as well.
You can get the same leaves on.
It's just sharing some
Is the
characteristics,
leaves-
they just had no idea.
Yeah, and they could probably crossbreed, I would imagine, too.
Okay.
And then there's probably variations or sub-varieties that have happened secondary to that.
So the pond would be better for flat tops if you said it's more apically dominant.
Yeah, it seems to be. I like it for weeping, because it always seems to want to weep down. Yeah, like this thing, if just letting the leaves lay there, this is how it goes. His leaves are sticking more straight out like that, not hanging down. So this tends to lend itself more toward the, like a weeping look to it. I have one that I collected for right next to my pond, that the trunk, I don't know, maybe it's about this big around. And I was able to bend it and make an S bend in it. Yeah, 1,500-pound come along and about a half a gallon of rum. And,
Did you collect that one right there in front of us?
what's that?
Did you collect that one?
Yes. Yeah, that was from my spot down in Malabar.
Is that curved like that natural?
No, this was straight out like that. It was like a flat top, but just a one-sided flat top. So I like the look of it. It has mature bark on it, so I just bent it on down. And I've had to keep this on it for a long time.
Breaking. Did you use raffia?
Yeah, yeah. They're quite pliable. Like that big one, I just used cellophane wrap, like for wrapping pallets and stuff like that. Yeah, so I wrapped it around that, and I hooked the come along at the bottom of the tree and the top of the tree, and I bent it all the way down, and now it's down in my pond. And then I put a rod in between that connected these two. And then say this part down here was in the pond, I put a fulcrum point here and then bent it back up this way and then put a rod in between there. So now I have an S-shaped tree that was a straight tree at one point. Yeah, and now it's, this tall versus 15 feet tall.
Any particular time of year when you do something like that, Reg?
Well, that night it was dependent on the alcohol, so.
Okay, how about this
Yeah.
one that you didn't?
Probably in the wintertime is gonna be better because there's not as much of the fluids going up and down.
How long did it take before you could disconnect the straps without kicking back in the face?
I'm gonna do a few more years.
Yeah?
I tried it a couple years ago. Pardon me?
How many's been total, you're thinking?
5.
Okay. So 7-8 year project then?
Yeah, it's not gonna be a short-term thing,
And longer
unfortunately.
for thicker.
Yeah, the one that I did in my pond, I was able to take this one off, but I still have this one. It's still there.
So how long was the actual process of you doing the bed?
A night, a few hours. Yeah. Yeah, I put a big eye hook. I drove it into the bottom, and that way I had a hook point for the come along, and then another one at the top, and just bent it. It made all sorts of noise and all sorts of fun stuff. Oh, also, generally speaking, when you collect a bald cypress, not every root around the perimeter is going to live in the long run. It's not uncommon to have one of the roots die off, and that will create a shari area. This is another thing with cypress. This root will feed this area going up here. If I was to cut that root off, that side of the tree would die off. So you got to make sure there's roots feeding that part. If you want to take one off, there better be one right underneath it that'll help keep feeding that up there. It won't do that. What's it when it goes around the side? When a root feeds around the side, other trees where you can cut a root off and other roots will fill in for the one that's not there anymore. So with a juniper and a cypress, it's not so much that way. Okay, so this is the one we want to trim up a little bit. Is that from Penders?
I don't know.
might have come from someone in Georgia.
The range of bald cypress go up to Michigan. There's people up there. Where does Dale live? Ohio?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dale Kochoy planted a cypress in his old house, and a couple of months ago he showed a picture of it, and it's still there. Look good.
I saw a big one up in Fort Wayne, Indiana,
Uh-huh.
which is way up there.
Yeah. I would not buy a cypress from somewhere else and bring it here and expect it to live real well. Sometimes they don't do real
Why
good.
do we ship ours there?
Same thing,
Yeah.
yeah.
Even like from Louisiana or?
No, they tend, if you ship one from Florida up north, they tend to be not as cold hardy.
Mhm.
Right, but what about Louisiana, the Gulf Coast?
Yeah, Louisiana.
Yeah, that's kind of common with any species. If it's grows here and you ship it somewhere else, it's going to stress for a while. It may eventually learn to live there, but not always. You know, buttonwoods, forget about a buttonwood up north. I mean, good luck with those. Okay, so looking at a tree, do we have a trash can or anything?
Just throw it on the ground.
Okay. No problem, I'm good with that. Yeah, I'm a messy guy, I'm good. Okay, so anytime we have a tree, the first thing we want to do is look at the base of it, because that is where the power and strength of the tree comes from, is from the roots. So we want to find the best looking root base or bottom of the tree that we can. Sometimes it doesn't always coincide with what we have up at top, so sometimes we have to make choices. Yeah. Sometimes I can't remember what I'm trying to say. Choices between a little bit of this is good, a little bit of that's good. Find a balance between the two. That's not bad. That's not good. That's not good, and that's not good. All right, so we have a front.
4 seconds.
Yeah. Well, here we'll go through it. That's no good as a front, right? That's not the widest part of the tree. It's not real pretty. Okay. So that's not the front. What did I say? This was the front. Yeah. This is the front. So this isn't as nice. This one looks a little nicer. This root, if we take this side, this root comes up a little higher. There's a lot of space in between here. This root's down a little lower. It kind of hugs the ground a little bit better. Has a nice wider base to it. So I think what we'll use here is the front. And then for those that can't remember where the front is, you can put a little marker in here that says this is the front. Yeah, I guess so. Doesn't look like it's rooted very well. It's got some. All right, so I'm going to go through and kind of cut off the branches that are not going to be used in the design.